You're a few months in. You've lost count of how many zombies you've killed, how many days have passed, and the last time you saw some fresh food anywhere in the world. You're starting to live off what you can hunt, fish, and farm. You need to head to mines to get ores. You're increasingly focused on ensuring your base is secure as the winter sprinters approach. Perhaps you've even created a scrapyard from the cars you've broken driving through zombies. From farming to fuels, mining to mechanics, these are 10 tips to master the late game. If you've not made it to the late game, you may want to watch my beginner tips and mid-game tips first. For everyone else, let's get into it. Perhaps you've done some fishing, maybe some hunting too, but you're missing having some greens on your plate. Or maybe you're keen to decorate your base with jack-o'-lanterns, but all the fruit and veg you find is beyond saving. To get over this, you need to learn how to farm. Farming in vain requires 6 things. Somewhere to plant your crop, like a planter, some appropriate soil, I wouldn't waste any time with anything worse than average quality soil, some seeds, a way of watering said seeds, the right season, because temperature does matter, and sunlight. Sunlight is crucial. A bonus is compost, but you can grow without it. Here you can see I've built one of every planter. I've built a compost bin, and I've built a couple of water sources. In reality, one is probably enough for this, but I've then hooked up some sprinklers to make watering the plants doable at the click of a button. To get started, make sure the weather is fair outside, not too cold, and when you've built your planters, you can plant your seeds. Then make sure they're watered, being careful not to allow the water levels to drop to 0. If they do, they'll likely die. Treat your plants like you treat your pet. They need love, care, and attention. Unless you have a cat, they probably couldn't give a Similar to a pet cat though, if it is winter, your plants will love a heater. At the moment you can hack the cooler days by building heaters near your planters to increase the ambient temperature if needed. You can inspect your plants and we'll see that each different plant has different growing times. Some are hardier than others, and you can also see things like quality and crop thirst, which is also different for each plant. It's important to note that each crop you can grow tells you what size planter you'll need. Pumpkins, for example, need larger planters, onions small, and cucumbers medium. Now, if that's not been exciting enough for you, let's talk compost. Compost takes 5 days to compost. That is also a verb, I checked. But crucially, what you pop in your compost bin will determine the quality of the compost you get out. For example, in these 3 compost bins, I have one filled with corn, one full of meat, and one full of cardboard scraps. And the quality of the compost I'll get out is different. Meat-based compost isn't very good at all. However, compost made from things like cardboard scraps, or a shed load of corn in this instance, will produce excellent quality compost. Don't forget that for the compost to be created, you need to seal the compost bin when you've got 25 pounds of organic matter inside. Then once it's been 5 in-game days, you just use this like soil. Take the soil out of your planters and put the compost in. So you've been hunting, fishing, and now farming. But what do you do with all that food? Eat it raw? Don't you dare. Cooking in vain is pretty straightforward. You'll need an appliance, typically an oven or a stove, however campfires and fireplaces are also options. Then you'll need to source yourself some crockery. To be able to cook all the recipes, you'll need a cast iron pan, cooking pot, kettle, and oven dish. Then there's fluids. Some recipes don't need any, but a lot do, so cooking oil and water are a must really here. Finally, you'll need the ingredients for the thing that you'd like to cook. To see what each recipe needs in terms of crockery, ingredients and fluids, just hover over the recipe on the left. Cooking appliances in vain work in much the same way as the workbenches. To be able to cook something, you need to have the ingredients and the tool, in this case our oven dish, pan, kettle or pot, in the inventory of the appliance or fire itself. For recipes that require fluids, you can pop bottles of water or oil into the inventory of the stove too. The trade-off for a lot of recipes is time versus hunger satiation versus ingredients required. For example, seared meat and fried meat give the same hunger satiation at 45%, however searing takes 2 minutes and 5 seconds. It only needs a pan and no fluid, but it takes a while in comparison to fried meat, which for the same satiation takes less than a quarter of the time at 30 seconds. It too uses the pan, but will also use cooking oil, so that's the trade-off. Once your item is cooked, it'll reach 100% on the bottom left of the queue. You need to manually click it to stop cooking when it reaches 100%. If you leave it, it'll burn, and burned food makes you sad and thirsty. After clicking it, the item goes back into the stove's inventory so you can take it out and eat that tasty food. A quick note, anything boiled seems to take a lot longer than something grilled or fried, so if you've got cooking oil, I'd use it. For liquids, it's a little different, so should you brew hot chocolate, or, as a Brit, tea, this will use water from the inventory of the stove and will then end up in the fluids box at the bottom of the middle panel. Then you need to simply transfer the fluid into a container by dragging the container onto it and filling it up. And that is cooking in a nutshell. So, you know how to cook what you've farmed, fished or hunted, but when you go hunting you shouldn't just end up with meat to eat, you'll likely end up with pelts and leather too. A crucial element to repair things such as the combat backpack is hard leather, and leather can be used to fix up shoes and a variety of other items at the repair bench as well. To get leather or hard leather, first you need some of the raw stuff. Killing a boar will give you raw hard leather. Killing a deer, for example, will give you normal leather, and if you kill a wolf, then you'll be able to get a pelt as well. Now, the raw stuff isn't incredibly useful, so it needs to be dried first. Building a drying rack requires construction level 40, but it is a fairly cheap recipe with 4 reinforced wooden rods needed and some screws. Once you've built the rack, you need to simply put the raw leather and any raw pelts into the rack's inventory and be patient as you wait. When I tested, it took a real life hour of playtime in game before the pelts, leather and hardened leather was dried and ready to use, but then, when they're ready, just take them out of the inventory of the drying rack and off you pop on your merry, leathery way. Now, there's a lot of stuff in Vane, and as you've made it to this video and presumably the late game, you must have accumulated quite a lot of it. If so, then this tip is for you. Amongst many things we can build in Vane, there's a number of buildable storage options to meet our needs. In terms of fluids, you can build a fluid barrel. This will hold 189.2 litres. And then non-fluid storage, you'll need this for some of the heavy items like ores and ingots, which we'll be covering in tips 5 and 7. The small crate holds a pretty handy £150, whereas the large crate holds double at £300. Both crates can hold any items in the game with no limitations as to what you can put in them, and you can also label them by hovering over them and selecting rename. In addition, you can also tidy up your crate storage by building shelves. 2 choices here, the reinforced wood shelf or the scrap metal shelf. Each holds the same number of crates, 4 large ones or 8 of the smaller ones, and you can of course mix and match as required. The only real difference between the two is strength. The scrap metal shelf is 6,000 points strong, reinforced wooden shelf is 750 points strong, which may be a consideration for PvP. And then we move into specific storage options, which limit you in terms of what you can store in them. Starting with the document shelf, which you guessed it, only put documents in like schematics. This will hold £50. Next up is the key hook, which can be a really handy place to put the many keys you may have collected. This can hold up to £10 of keys in it, and is the smallest current buildable storage option in the game. Then we move on to scrap storage and log storage and plank storage, bunched together as they share the same load capacity, just for different materials. If you're saving scrap for your utility cabinet or making ingots, then this has you covered with the scrap storage holding up to £500. The log and plank storage also offer plentiful storage capacity at £500 each too, for obviously logs and planks. Now we're going from above ground to underground. It's time to talk about mining and ores. To master the late game in Vane, it's likely you're going to need some things such as high-grade ingots, which require a variety of different things to make. You can wander around the world exploring and hoping to find enough scrap to cobble together, or you can venture forth into one of the many mines in game, get your pickaxe out and swing like the 60s. I imagine at least. I mean, I'm not old enough to have lived through those times, but apparently they did a lot of swinging, and I hope they mean dancing by that, but that's not the sort of thing I want to ask my parents or grandparents. Quickly moving on from those dark thoughts to these dark mines, the mines in Vane are rich in ore goodness. There's a lot to find, including bauxite, chalcopyrite, coal, graphite, hematite, limestone and silica. If you don't yet have a pickaxe, venturing into the mines you may strike gold. Not literally, we don't have that yet, and find some ores in one of the many containers down in the mines. Or you could find a pickaxe. Win-win. One thing's for sure, when you venture down into the mines you'll need a light source such as a headlight, a decent sized backpack and a good amount of carry capacity freed up, ready to make the most of your trip. It is quite easy to be turned around in the mines, so take advice from Hansel and Gretel and leave something to indicate where you've come from. Spray paint or glow sticks could work well here, but glow sticks will only light up for 5 minutes, so if you're confident in your torches, spray paint or dropping other markers could be best. After emerging from the cave victorious, massively over-encumbered, and completely bewildered as to how you managed to find your way out, you'll need to understand what to do with your ores when you get back home. Now, for most ores, you're likely to just want to smelt them, but there are a few exceptions. We'll get into smelting in tip 7, but to crush your hopes and dreams... Oh no, sorry, that's the wrong line. To crush your ores, you'll need to either build the fabrication bench or build yourself a handy ore crusher. We'll focus on the ore crusher here, as we covered workbenches in the mid-game tips video. To use the ore crusher, first you'll need some gasoline. Fill the ore crusher up by filling its fluid container with appropriate fuel, and then you just need the item as per the recipe. Pop that in the ingredients box and turn the crusher on, and after a short while you'll get your required powder. Don't forget to knock it off when you're done to avoid wasting fuel. DeadZedje, you've just been talking about ores and mining, and now you're cutting down trees. What are you doing? Trust me, there is method to the madness. If you don't want to crush your ores, you'll need to smelt them to get them into a usable state. But before we get all hot and bothered by rushing ahead and popping some ores into a furnace, we need to talk fuel. And as this is tip 6, we're past the halfway point in the video, so if you're finding value in this so far, please do like and subscribe. This stuff is made completely free for you, and pressing a couple of buttons really does help me out. Thank you. There are numerous different sources of fuel in Vane. For this segment though, I'm only exploring solid fuels that we can use in furnaces for smelting, so no petrol, diesel or kerosene. Now, solid fuels come in a few different forms and from a few different sources in Vane. The easiest to access is wood, hence why I'm cutting down trees to get wooden logs. Next up is kindling, again we can craft that from logs, and then there's charcoal, which is found in barbecues out in the world, or that can be made using a kiln. There's also refined charcoal. As these are the most plentiful other than wood, these are likely to be the most commonly used. To make standard charcoal, you need to first make a charcoal kiln, and then you simply ignite it and put wood logs into the ingredients section. Wait patiently, as it takes a minute to turn into charcoal. Charcoal has a burn time of 10 seconds when a furnace is up to temperature, but you can improve that by turning your charcoal into refined charcoal. For this, you do need to have an advanced charcoal kiln, and you simply put the charcoal back into the kiln in the ingredients slot, wait a minute and a half, and you'll get refined charcoal. This has a burn time of 15 seconds. Don't worry, I know I'm chucking times at you, but I'll bring up a table to show the efficiency of each fuel in a moment. That's charcoal, standard being made using a normal or advanced charcoal kiln, and refined charcoal for which you do need the advanced kiln. Next up is coal and coke, bundled together because they come from the same thing, raw coal. Now, raw coal can be used as a fuel source as it is. It'll give you a burn time of 20 seconds, which is the best so far. However, if you go back to your advanced charcoal kiln, you can turn your raw coal into coke. Not the kind you drink, and definitely not the other kind, but an efficient fuel source for all of your smelting needs. Coke has a burn time of 45 seconds once the furnace is up to temperature. Now, I promised a visual breakdown, and a visual breakdown is exactly what you're going to get. Each different fuel type in Vane offers a few different qualities. They vary by burn time and burn temperature. Here's a handy little table which you may want to screenshot and take note of. Importantly though, you need to pay attention to the maximum burn temperature of each fuel, as for example wood doesn't reach the required temperature to make an iron ingot, and charcoal isn't a good enough fuel for the high grade iron ingots either. Talking of ingots, we need to talk about smelting. Tip number 7 sees us explore the exciting world of taking our fuels and our ores and fusing them together. Well, using one to smelt the other, but you get what I'm saying. For a lot of the crafting recipes as you advance through Vane, and a lot of the more advanced workstations, fortifications, and utilities, you need more advanced materials. For a lot of these recipes, you'll need ingots, and to make ingots, you'll need to smelt using some of those fuels we've just been talking about. See, it does all come together. For the basic ingots, ones which aren't high grade, you can use the standard makeshift forge. However, for the high grade ingots, you'll need to use the industrial forge. For the basic ingots, there's a couple of different ways of making most of these. Hover over the ingot that you'd like to forge, and you'll be shown the required ingredients. For example, to make an iron ingot, you'll need either 5 bits of raw hematite ore, or you'll need 10 bits of iron scrap. Either recipe will take 6 seconds. Note, this is either recipe. You do not need both items. You'll need to add your fuel and then click Ignite. Important note here, just in case you aren't aware or you haven't watched my 23 small details in vain video, how rude of you if you haven't, do not take things out of the forge straight away, unless you've got protection. I'm not talking about a security detail, and I'm not talking about swinging 60s protection, but hand protection. A pair of firefighter gloves will do you well here, and will prevent you getting burns. Talking of temperatures, this is where your burn temperature from the fuels is so important. Here's another handy little table to help you out. These are the required temperatures to smelt each ingot. As you'd expect, the high-grade ingots typically need a hotter temp, with the high-grade steel ingot requiring a staggering 2,500 degrees Celsius to smelt. Kindling ain't gonna cut it here. Again, the ingredients in brackets where there's a comma are the only things you'll need to make that ingot. Where there's an and, that shows 2 ingredient recipes. Now you've got a great understanding of fuel types, ores, and how to smelt them. You now need to find a way of using up all of those ingots you've got, right? Perhaps you want to craft loads of stuff, or perhaps you've realised how much there is to craft, how many materials you need, how many different ways there is to store things, and you need more storage space. Whatever it is, there's a chance that the base you originally created isn't quite big enough for your growing needs. That's why tip number 8 sees us revisit the first tip from the mid-game tips video, utility cabinets. No, I'm not going over old ground, I'm helping you conquer new ground. There's no limit on how many of these little beauties you can have out and about in the world, so place away. Perhaps you're creating little satellite hub bases across the map, or perhaps like me, you drove north from the bar, found a lovely quaint little farm, and thought, do you know what will make that even nicer? Really high walls with barbed wire on top. Your ambitions in vain may expand in the late game, and this is where the additional utility cabinets can come in. Here on my little farm, which I accept now looks more like something you'd see on an island in San Francisco, is benefiting from the ability to put multiple utility cabinets down. This ensures all of my perimeter walls are covered and within the zone of a utility cabinet. This means the walls can be maintained and don't degrade over time. This is also a really handy trick if you're setting up a large base with friends or if you have grand plans for just yourself. You will of course need to bear a couple of things in mind with this. Placing utility cabinets means that the containers within the area of the UC will not respawn, so if you play with loot respawn on and you pop one down in a good looting location, containers will not respawn there. Additionally, in the settings you can turn off building degradation if you prefer, which means you don't need to put UCs down around the whole of your base. There's no judgment here, play the game in a way that you find fun. The penultimate tip, tip number 9. You've put loads of work into your base, you're hunkered down ready for the winter, you've stored up all of your fresh fish, meat and veg in fridges, or maybe you've cooked it all up and had a banquet, all of your goodies are tucked away safely, and you're ready to rock back and forth in a rocking chair until there's a need to go out. But you need to protect what's yours, and one way you can keep an eye on things whilst you remain in the safety of the sanctuary you've created is CCTV cameras. CCTV cameras are found in various locations across the map, the high school in Saranac and the prison in Dannemora, just to name a couple of decent locations to find these, and you can take these for yourself. Similar to moving any other furniture items in vain, you can simply pick these up and temporarily, presumably, attach them to your vehicle. Whilst this does make your car look like the world's worst attempt at creating an undercover FBI surveillance van for a short period of time, this hilarity does pay off. Careful driving is recommended here, otherwise you may see your CCTV camera turn to dust, or in my case, if you get close to a barrier, that gorgeous flat screen TV will go missing. Once back at your base, there's 3 steps to get the CCTV cameras up. First things first, you'll need to place them in the spots you'd like them. This can be a little finicky to get the angles right, so take your time and move them until they're in the right spots. Second step is wiring the CCTV up to your base's electrical circuits. For this, you'll want to link them to a power outlet, socket, or a fuse board. Bonus tip here, if your camera is too far away from a socket, hit the backslash, and then you can go into your config. And in your config settings, you can actually change the maximum wire distance. Crank this up until that red rope turns green, and then you can go ahead and connect. You'll need to hook each camera up to an electricity source. Step 3 is connecting the cameras to your TV. To do this, you do not need to look at the connections for your TV. Instead, you go to the source information by changing source to camera, and then you click on Use Controls. Here at the bottom, you'll see a subsection for cameras, click Add Camera, and then you'll get a visual rope like we see connecting water or electrical, but this time it's yellow. You'll need to do this for each camera, and once connected, you should be able to view your cameras on your TV, with the ability to flick through each one. So now you're all set up, you can stay snuggled up and warm when it's chilly outside, and you can keep an eye on those winter sprinters from afar. We've covered an awful lot, not just in this video, but in the two prior. 29 tips up to now, and there's one thing I haven't mentioned once. Mechanics. I hear you, there's loads of cars in the world, no shortage of them. Why do I need to look after the ones I have? Well, the answer to that is this. You've made it to the late game, you've raided countless cars for their batteries so you could build your own batteries for your base, and at this point you've probably used a lot of cars to do what we all do, which is zombie hit and run. The number of viable cars isn't infinite, and there's some things you should really know about your car to make sure that they don't become a problem. Car maintenance can be critical in vain. A car crash and that could be the end of your run. Whilst getting into the detail of mechanics is a whole other video, here's 4 key things to check and remember. Number 1, car parts degrade over time and with use. Check them every so often and make sure that everything is in a fair condition. It's worthwhile keeping a stock of spares somewhere in your base so you can swap things out as needed. Number 2, your driving skill or ability may not be the thing that's making cars trickier to drive, or slightly more slidey than usual. Check your tyres. Tyres being underinflated will cause problems with handling, so make sure they're in good nick. Another thing that can affect handling is brakes, so check those too. That's what I always blame for my car accidents anyway. Number 3 is light bulbs. No, I've not just had another brilliant idea, but I need to talk to you about bulbs. These degrade, and in the winter the amount of daylight you have to play and drive around in is less, meaning you're likely to need your lights more. There's nothing worse than driving around in the winter in the apocalypse than having your headlights suddenly give up the ghost, at the risk of you, well, turning into a ghost. Check your lights and replace the bulbs as needed. And tip number 4 on mechanics, the final one, arguably the most important one, and it's the one you've probably been waiting for, is that you're in the late game, so treat yourself. Give your car a respray. Grab some steel wool, strip the paint, and then give it a new lease of life. Be a bougie apocalypse survivor. Drive around with colour, style, and pizzazz. If you found any of this helpful, entertaining, odd, enjoyable, or all of these things, please do drop a like on the video and it would be great if you could subscribe. I release a new Let's Play episode every Monday and a new Vane video every Wednesday. I'm trying to build a bit of a community and I'd love for you to be part of it. In the comments let me know which tip did you find the most useful and what else would you like me to cover in relation to Vane. I look forward to reading and replying to all of your thoughts down below. Here's a couple of videos Auntie Algorithm thinks you'll enjoy. And I'll catch you next time.